What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through the top waiver wire targets heading into week 12 of the NFL season. Now, I'm guessing in most of your leagues, the typical regular size leagues, the waiver wire is probably going to be pretty picked through at this point. So we're going to try to locate maybe those, 2, 3, 4 players who could be sitting out there that might be able to plug and play into your lineup week to week, or if you're desperate, flex play, injuries, all of that. But we're also going to try to locate some of those players who maybe with an injury or a later season breakout could become relevant in your fantasy football lineup. If you guys enjoy the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe. And then keep in mind, these are going to be players that are rostered in 40% or fewer leagues using the ESPN waiver wire. So now looking at my first player here, he's rostered in 31.7% of leagues, and it is going to be Jonnu Smith. He is coming off of a monster game, 8 targets, 6 receptions for 101 yards, 2 touchdowns. He actually led the team in routes. So Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Jonnu Smith was the leading route runner here with a 92% route participation. In 5 of his last 6 games, he has put up at least 6 targets and 45 receiving yards, and he has essentially turned Jalen Waddle into like a non-factor within this offense. So on an offense where I think a lot of people, including myself, were expecting like a 3-headed monster with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, it's pretty much turned into Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, and Jonnu Smith. Like, Waddle has really taken the back seat here, and I feel like Jonnu Smith, if you're desperate at the tight end position, he is going to be relevant in like that fringe tight end 1 range. As per usual, once you're getting into like the back end tight end 1s through like the high to mid tier tight end 2s, the gap is going to be very, very small. So it's pretty much like who's going to hit in the touchdown department, but he is getting involved consistently week to week and is someone who, could be plug and played in your tight end position moving forward. Now we're going to have a couple of wide receivers here. The first one is going to be Elijah Moore, who is rostered in under 10% of ESPN leagues. And in week 11, he was targeted 8 times, caught 6 of them for 66 yards and a touchdown. He has put up 10 plus PPR points in 3 of his last 4 games. Those are obviously the 4 games where Jameis Winston has played meaningful snaps. And then in his last 3 games, he has been targeted 29 total times. I mean, I really cannot overstate how massive Jameis Winston has been for this passing attack, this offense. I mean, really the wide receivers, run game has not been great, but in terms of like Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, Elijah Moore, he has just been so insane for them. The volume for all those dudes is really just, out of control at this point. So for Elijah Moore, is he like a great weekly wide receiver 3 flex play? Probably not, but with bye weeks, with some injuries in there, he could definitely be someone who slots into your flex spot. And if he's just sitting out there for free on waivers, it definitely could be worth a pickup. The other wide receiver is someone who I've talked about a decent amount in these waiver wire videos. It is Demario Douglas, rostered in 26.2% of leagues. Now, is he ever going to be like some smash start in your lineup? Probably not. A lot of that is just due to the fact that his route participation is not great. It seems like he is their clear like top weapon on offense, but he's only running a route, at least in week 11, on 63% of the dropbacks. But in 4 healthy games with Drake May, where both May and Douglas were healthy for the full game, he has put up 21.2, 10.5, 9, and 10.9 PPR points. So a fairly high floor in those games, had one kind of, peak ceiling game where he did get into the end zone. Like I said, I don't think he's ever going to be an amazing play, but could he be a desperate wide receiver 3 flex option? I definitely do think he could kind of fill in that role. And then we're going to go back to the tight end position here to talk about Will Dissly, who is rostered in 13.9% of leagues. And the fact that I'm talking about Will Dissly as like a fantasy relevant tight end is honestly just insane to me. I mean, he was like the guy in recent years who was just like this massive nuisance to Noah Fant because they were the Seahawks were like running this tight end by committee, and Noah Fant, the guy who had been fantasy relevant in years past, all of a sudden he's in like this 3-headed split. Will Dissly was one of those guys and was not really viewed as like a great pass catching tight end, but in 4 of the last 5 games, he has put up at least 8 PPR points, which not a high bar, but once you're getting into like fringe tight end 1 territory, the bar is just not going to be high. And then 6+ targets in 4 of those 5 games also. And you also look at the upcoming schedule, some pretty favorable passing matchups. They go up against the Ravens, the Falcons, and the Buccaneers in 3 of those 4 games. So Will Dissly, do I love him in my lineup? Probably not. But if your tight end position has been in shambles attached to Justin Herbert, you could do worse there at the tight end position. Now, honestly, we're just going to be getting into a lot of these running back options and just kind of rifling through them. The first one, I'd say, is probably the one out of these players where maybe they have like desperate weekly value if you're really screwed in your running back 2 spot. It's going to be Roschon Johnson, rostered in 14.2% of leagues. And we actually saw with the offensive coordinator shakeup, he did take a larger share of the offense. So was this just a one-off thing? Is this something that's going to continue moving forward? We'll have to wait and see. But he took 10 of the 24 running back carries. Not an insignificant chunk, right? Not a chunk where you're like, all right, I want this guy on my lineup every single week, but something where maybe he can build on it or just stay there and, like I say, be that like desperate play. But he took 100% of the 2-minute drill snaps. He took 7 of the 9 third downs. He took 6 of the 7 short yardage situations. And then he also got into the end zone on a goal line touchdown. So not the worst usage in the world. Definitely more like that handcuff option to DeAndre Swift, but someone who does deserve a mention here. And then the rest of these guys are fairly pure handcuffs. The first one is going to be Blake Corum. It kind of sucks because I feel like every week I talk about Blake Corum, and this has honestly just like not been the year for handcuff running backs. Typically, at least some of these guys are like stepping up with an injury, giving you running back 2, maybe even running back 1 production. The running back position has just stayed like weirdly healthy this year, and it's a positive, right? I'm glad these guys are not getting hurt, but at the running back position, it's such like an injury-prone spot where typically like these guys are just dropping, you're getting these handcuffs, they're giving you that value. Like the only guy I can even think of that was like really like worked as a handcuff was really early on in the season, and it was Zach Charbonnet, who had a couple of big games with no Kenneth Walker. But since then, like these guys have been insanely healthy. So for Blake Corum, with like the workload Kyron's handling, his injury, history in the past, it seems like Blake Corum is someone who should have at this point at least gotten a shot or like a crack in a game or two. And not saying it can't happen, but it is a little bit unfortunate. I will say though, right, at this point in the season, the waiver wire is probably pretty picked through. Like what's going to be better for your lineup? Some random wide receiver like a Kayshon Boutte or like a Dontavian Wicks who are projected for like 8 PPR points, or a handcuff who's maybe projected for 2, 3, 4, but if an injury goes down, they could instantly turn into like a 15 PPR point game guy. So keep that in mind, right? Instead of rostering like those just complete useless wide receivers, I feel like it's like the tier below your Elijah Moores, your Demario Douglases, where you wouldn't even really love to like desperate flex them. At that point, just pick up a handcuff. An injury could make them super relevant. So Blake Corum there, plus just a spiel on handcuff running backs. Then we have Ray Davis, rostered in 15.5% of leagues, the James Cook handcuff. He also has like the nice 1-game sample size where James Cook missed. He stepped up, had a really nice game. Always at least good to see it in action, whether it's like in a previous season or in this specific season, just so you know what type of usage you can expect. We do have that with Ray Davis. Then we have Cam Akers, who's actually kind of interesting here, rostered in 16.5% of leagues. This was a backfield where you had Aaron Jones, looked like Ty Chandler was the clear number 2. Maybe some people thought there was going to be some sort of committee there. But then the Vikings go out and trade for Cam Akers, who was pretty much like the number 3 on the Texans depth chart behind Dameon Pierce and Joe Mixon. But it seems like Cam Akers has come in. The Vikings really like him. He has pretty clearly jumped Ty Chandler on this depth chart. Actually had 10 carries, 2 targets in the Week 11 game. So the clear Aaron Jones handcuff, and maybe is going to have some usage week to week. Then we have Trey Benson, who is rostered in 17.3% of leagues, the James Conner handcuff, but has actually had some decent usage in the last 2 games, 9 and 12 opportunities. You can maybe throw him in like that Roschon Johnson tier of guys where like maybe he'll have fine enough usage where he can be a really desperate play. Wouldn't love it, but like I said, if you're desperate, it's fine. 10 plus PPR points in both those games. I will say for Trey Benson, if this was like a spot in the season where the Cardinals were like out of the playoff picture, were really struggling, this could be the start of like a Trey Benson takeover, right? He is going to be their running back of the future. It is not James Conner, but the fact that they're definitely in contention, like they're looking like a pretty good team, it's probably very unlikely that Trey Benson like overtakes James Conner without an injury. Then just a couple more running backs here. We have Gus Edwards rostered in 25.9% of leagues. Definitely just the J.K. Dobbins handcuff. They clearly like him significantly more than Kamani Vidal because with Vidal, playing as the running back too, J.K. Dobbins was the complete workhorse. Now you have Gus Edwards kind of working his way in. And then the last guy here, Braelon Allen, rostered in 19.8% of leagues. Tough to get, hyped about this Jets offense, but if Breece Hall goes down, Braelon Allen is definitely still startable in your lineups. But that is going to wrap it up for the top waiver wire targets heading into week 12. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by. Any questions, drop them down below, but I will see you all in the next one.